Welcome after a long hiatus, probably 2 weeks, maybe more. We're resuming. In a way, we never really learned a new section, and it's page 14b, Masechta Brachos, Yud Daled Amud Beis. Excuse me. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. We are, of course, discussing the concept of Shema. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha said, Lama Kadma Pasha Shema, why is Shema before Shemona Esrei? We have an order of the three sections. First Shema, V'hafta, then V'hayim Shemaya, then V'yemer. Why is it in this particular order? So the Gemara tells us like this. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, also known for the author of the Zohar. He said as follows, B'dinhu sheyaktim Shema V'hayim Shemaya. It makes sense that first you should say the first section of Shema and V'hafta, and then the second section, which talks about if you don't listen to the laws and various blessings and opposite of blessings and so on, that will come. The reason he says why it makes sense is Shazel Lulmaid V'zel Lamed. This one is talking about learning, and this is talking about teaching. Shema L'V'hayim Shemaya. Sorry, I missed the line. So the first section of Shema, which the Gemara is going to challenge, but the first section says that you should learn Torah. Afterwards, it says you should teach Torah to your children. So first you learn yourself, and then you teach others. So, because the Gemara is going to question that, but it says so that's the teaching part. The first part is Alev Avecha, and so on. You're learning. So first learning, and then teaching. Yes, the Gemara is going to ask that and why it's different. But right now, we're saying that comes first, and the second section comes before the third, is because the second section talks about teaching, and the third section talks about doing. So it's learning, teaching, and doing. That's the logical order that it should be in. You want to tell me in the first section it only has learning, but it doesn't have teaching and doing? It says the same with the Shinantam. It says in the first section, you should teach your children. Ukshartam, and you should tie on. Uchsaftam, which is an action, tefillin, and mezuzah. Both of these things are action as well. So why do you tell me the first section comes first? Because it's learning, it's also action, and also doing. Vesu, and in addition, v'hayim shamei alamed hodi ispe lespe. You want to tell me that in the second section it also only has teaching but doesn't have doing? Look what it says. And the same thing in the second section. We also have clearly about the mitzvah of tefillin and of mezuzah, which is action. So this whole concept of one should come before the other because one is learning versus teaching versus doing, they all have all three of them. At least the first two do. This is what really he's saying. Bidinhu, it makes sense, that Shema should become a first, because the first section of Shema talks about learning, teaching, and doing. So let's learn this a little bit differently. The first section comes first because it has all three, learning, teaching, and doing. The second section comes before the third because it has teaching and doing. And the third section only has doing. It doesn't talk about learning directly in this third section of Shema, which, as a side note, it shows us the importance of the order of davening and why things are set up a certain way. And we're careful not to skip to get ahead and so on and so forth. Why don't you learn it out from what Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha said? We started this section quoting a brisa from Yeshua ben Karcha, which we said first you have to accept the Malchus Shamayim, the yoke of heaven, and then you go and you about the mitzvahs. First you accept the king, and then you accept his edicts. Why do you have to have this whole different teaching? One has learning and teaching and doing. It's complicated. So the Gemara says, Chada v'eid ka'amar. He's not negating what Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha said. He's saying one reason and another reason. First reason why Shema comes, then Vayemer, because first you accept the yoke of heaven and then you accept the mitzvahs. And another reason, the oid, because it has these other things there. Because one has learning, teaching, and doing. The second one has learning and doing. teaching and doing. And the last one only has action. So basically it's two reasons, but we have more of an explanation of why the Shema is spelled out in this order. Rashi says, Ol mitzvahs, danachas tefillin ol mitzvah. Putting on tefillin is the yoke of mitzvahs. It's tying your heart and your mind and so on. So I think about it. Rav, Moshi Yodei, now the Gemara relates how Rav behaved in regards to wearing tefillin and davening. Rav would wash his hands in the morning, the Kara Krishma, then he would say Shema, and then the Anach tefillin he would put on tefillin. The Tzoli, and then he would daven, which is Shemona Esrei. How could he do such a thing? Wash, Shema, tefillin, Shemona Esrei. It seems to be not the right order. Vatanya, we learned clearly. If somebody is involved with a mitzvah, he's digging a grave to bury somebody, which is a mitzvah. And while he's doing that, he's exempt from the other mitzvahs. Okay, so the Gemara, the Brisa told us clearly he's exempt from Shema, number one, then from Shemona Esrei, then from Tefillin, then from all the mitzvahs, which Torah says. But when he giyazman krishma, once the time of Shema arrived, oila, you get out of your ditch that he's in or whatever he's working on, v'neitol yadav, and then you wash your hands. In this order, wash your hands, umaniach tefillin, v'kere krishma mispalo. So it's washing hands, tefillin, Shema, and Shemona Esrei. And Rav, he did washing hands, Shema, tefillin, and Shemona Esrei. What kind of order is this? If there's any teaching for the order, it's what we do: washing, tefillin, Shema, and Shemona Esrei. So, and besides, this itself is a question. Why is it a question? Because Reisha Amar Patur, the Sefer Chayiv. The beginning of this brayso that we just mentioned, you said if you're involved in a mitzvah, so then you're exempt because you're busy taking care of a different mitzvah. You don't have to do the other mitzvahs. It's a general principle. If you're involved in one mitzvah, you're exempt from the other mitzvah. And then you said, well, when the time of Shema comes, then stop what you're doing, wash your hands, say Shema. Which one is it? What answers Halei Kasha? It's not a question. Seifa b'tidei b'reisha b'chad. The Seifa, the end of the brayso, is talking about a case when you have two people working on it, and two people are working, they can get the job done. So work as fast as you can. It's an important mitzvah. Take care of it. But once the time of Shema comes, one of you get up, take care of it, switch. The other person will do it. But the Reisha, the first part of the brayso, when you say that he's completely exempt, that is talking about there's only one person, and they have to bury the individual. So he's busy working. He can't stop to take care of these things. Okay. It's still a question on Rav. So we reconcile the Mishnah, the Brisa, how it's a contradiction. In one place it says you should stop the mitzvah to say Shema. The other one says you shouldn't. Vice versa. You shouldn't. You're exempt. The other one says you should stop. But Rav, whatever he did, the order sounds very off. Wash your hands, then you say Shema, then you put on tefillin. I say, what's going on here? So what it says, that Rav, he holds according to the Bishua ben Korcha, which we just quoted. The Omar, he said, first accept the yoke of heaven. You accept that there's a king. And afterwards, you go to the mitzvahs. So Eimer, you want to tell me that Yeshua ben Korcha hakim kriya lekriya? You think what he's trying to say is that you should say the kriya before the reading, and but really what he's telling us is you should read it before you do. It doesn't mean that you should say first Shema, then put on tefillin, and then Shemona Esrei. In other words, how did you learn from that? V'su, mi savar like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha. And besides, since when does Rav hold like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha? V'omer Reb Chia Barashi. Reb Chia Barashi said, Zimnin Segiyin, there are many times, I was many times in front of this Rav, which you claim was following Rabbi Shua ben Korcha's teaching. Umaktim, umashi yodei, umevarich, umasin lampirka, manach tefillin. V'hadar kari Krishna. I saw many times that he didn't do like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha, which you say he first accept Malchus Shamayim, the yoke of heaven. I saw him wash his hands, and then he made the brachos. Then he learned. Then he put on tefillin. Then he said Shema. If you want to tell me because it wasn't the time of Shema, so he's davening very, very early. Zman Krishma is like, 10 o'clock. So he got up really early. He did other things. He did Shema later. If you want to say that's the case, well, what's this witness? I saw him many times. This is what he did. You saw him at 6 a.m. He wasn't saying Shema. What are you learning from here? So Afuke is coming to exclude him. He's coming to teach us a totally different thing. There are opinions that for learning Mishnah, you don't have to make Birchas HaTorah. Only if you're learning, which we don't agree with. But he was trying, the witness, the testimony that he saw Rabbi Ashi do this, that he made Birchas HaTorah first, and then he learned Mishnah, is to tell you, or Halacha, is to tell you that don't come up with these ideas and try to go according to the opinion that you could just learn Mishnah without saying Birchas HaTorah first. Look what he did. We still have our original question about Rav. Why is it that he's doing this seemingly strange order? That he's doing the strange order that first he washes his hands, then he says Shema without tefillin, then he puts on tefillin, then he says Shema. What's going on? So the Gemara gives us a very creative answer. Shlucha Huda Avis. The messenger that went to get Rav's tefillin messed up. Someone went to get his tefillin. Let's say it was in his house or whatever it was. And he took his time. So Rav was doing the stuff you have to do right away. And hopefully when the tefillin come, I will correct it. Now, the only question is, what? He'll put it away. The only problem is that we said, Zimnin Sagin, many times I saw. So always the messenger was messing up? Unless you want to say the many times I saw was only that particular enough times? I think Rashi said Sagin was a lot. I saw somewhere. Where did I see it? Normally Sagin means enough times. Okay, let's do some Rashis. Shema, which is accepting the yoke of heaven, comes before the second section of Shema, Shahu, Kabbalas, or Mitzvahs. Umakdim, Mashkim, he will get up early. Umevarech ala Torah, he will make the Birchas HaTorah because he can't learn without that. Umasni Pirkin, he would teach the lesson, which is Mishnah or Halacha. Alma Makdim Ulasik Torah. So you see, first he learned Torah, and then he said Shema and put on tefillin. You're telling me he follows according to B'shua ben Karcha. First accept the yoke of heaven, then do the mitzvahs. He didn't do that. First he taught, then he put on tefillin, then he accepted the yoke of Shema, of Hashem, of heaven, which is by saying Shema. The shliach messed up. He tarried, he was late in bringing the tefillin. Me'ikara, originally. The Yezman Krishma and Hamashma came. And Chinhu, he put it on. Huh? He was very late. He was very late, you're saying? Many times. Okay, I mean, we could say that, but in general, it's an interesting question. You brought a proof, and you say, technically he was just the guy messed up. But anyway, to answer the Gemara, so that's the answer, that really he agrees with this opinion that first you accept the Malchus Shamayim, which is Shema, and then you get into the other stuff. And therefore, he put on tefillin afterwards. You see that he does differently. No, this was a technical reason because the shliach came late. Fine. Gemara continues. Omar Ula. Ula said, anyone, we had this earlier in Gemara, anyone that says Shema without tefillin, it's as if he's giving false testimony about in himself, because he's talking about putting on tefillin in the Shema and you're not wearing it. The Chibur Abbas says in the name of Rabbi Yechanan that if you put on tefillin, if you say Shema without wearing tefillin, it's as if you brought a. It's not about Eid Sheker, or maybe in addition to that. It's not just false testimony. It's as if you brought a korban oila, which is a beautiful thing to bring, but you did it without a mincha, without a zedach, and without a sachim. You're missing the components which have to be brought with the korban, the libations and so on. That's the original nusach. The pasuk required him lahakriv ima to bring together with the korban certain things. You have to bring a measurement of flour. Someone that reads Shema but is not wearing tefillin, it's as if he's not finishing the mitzvah. Just to remind everyone that we just said a story that if he didn't have tefillin, say Shema, because that's a separate mitzvah. But if you have a choice, that's how you should do it. This is the wine that gets poured on the altar. After you bring the oila on the shechnik, as the pasuk tells us, the measurement of how much pouring of a wine was by each korban. Oila also needs libations. The truth is, you don't have to say it as if you brought an oila and a mincha and so on and so forth, but this is how the pasuk speaks, so the Gemara is using the same term. But the point is, putting on tefillin without saying Shema without wearing tefillin is as if a person is not bringing, he's doing a karim, but he's missing some of the components. And Yanko, not long ago, by his Mitzvah, spoke about this in the Pilpul, that if you put on tefillin afterwards, close to it, it's still considered doing it together. I'm going to stop here. It's great to be back, healthy. And for my mitzvah tomorrow will continue. Tonight at 9 o'clock will be a special Farbrengen in honor of Beis Nissen, the yahrzeit of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe. Well, those that are watching, give us a thumbs up, a share, a subscribe. Greatly appreciate it.